In this lesson, first lesson of geometry, we're going to learn about the area of parallelograms and triangles. So the first two examples are both parallelograms, and the formula that we use for a parallelogram is area equals base times height. In the past, we've used length times width for squares and rectangles, but we use base times height because when you see this parallelogram, there's three numbers. So the one number we don't need. Now, if we said length times width, we would assume the outside of the shape here. Okay, but that's not what we want. We want base times height. Okay, so I want the base and how tall the shape is. When you measure yourself at the doctor's, you don't stand slanted like this. You want to stand right at a right angle from the floor and as tall as you can. So when I do the base and the height of a parallelogram, I am looking for this little right angle. That's going to be where my base and my height intersect. This extra 5 centimeters is the length, but I don't need the length in this case. Or the width of the shape. Okay, so when I go to plug in my formula, area equals, I'm going to use the 6 times the 4, and that's going to give me an area of 24 centimeters squared, or square centimeters. Okay, so for my next example, again, I'm going to show you why we're using the height and not that width here. Okay, if I were to take this triangle right here and maybe move it to this side right here, all of a sudden I've made a different shape, right? I'm not using this anymore. Now I'm looking at this shape, and that's a rectangle, and that's where we use that length times width, because this would be my length and my width of this rectangle would be the 8. So that's where I'm getting that height from, because in a rectangle, all of my angles are right angles. So my length and my width are really the base and the height. Right? It's the same thing. But when I all of a sudden make it into a parallelogram, my height has to, again, go from a right angle and go straight up. So the tricky part in today's lesson is really identifying which one is the base and which one is the height. So I'm doing base times height. Okay, my base and my height intersect at this right angle. So this is my base. This is my height. That's that extra information. So I would do area equals 25 meters times 8 meters. And that would give me an area of, I put that in my calculator, 200 square meters. Okay. We got 2 more examples to go over, and then you guys can try some on your own. Here are 2 more examples of parallelograms. Again, I'm going to write down that same formula, area equals base times height. And now I need to identify which one is the base and which one is the height. I'm going to look for that right angle to tell me, okay, this is where my base and my height meet at that right angle. So this would have to be my height, and this would have to be my base. This is that extra information. So area equals 12 feet times 7 feet. And when I plug that into my calculator, I get an area of 84 square feet. Okay. This last one's a little bit tricky. Again, just being able to identify the base times the height, and the base and the height, because it's kind of sideways. You could kind of turn your computer so you could see it a little bit differently. But here's that right angle, right? So if this is a right angle, then this one's also going to be a right angle with this parallel, because they're parallel lines. So these are where they intersect. So I would use the 6 and the 6. The 7.4 would not be needed. So my area is going to be 6 kilometers times 6 kilometers. And I would get an area of 36. Okay. So those are 4 examples. And now I want you to go on and try some on your own.